So today's presenters are Brett Nelson and Roy Tanner. Brett is the manager of our regional technical advisors here, and Roy is the System 800XA Global Product Marketing Manager.
And for what it looks like, I am Tanner than Brett, so I live up to my name. Well, hi everybody. I'm Roy Tanner. I got Brett Nelson next to me. He's the regional technical advisor or manager of the regional technical advisors, and I am the product marketing manager for 800XA. Well, we're going to do some more topics throughout the year, but for now, we wanted to tackle a couple things we get a lot of questions on, and that would be for data direct reports and also snapshot reports. Data direct reports is inherently in 800XA as part of the base, and there's a lot of functionality there, as well as there's an option called snapshot reports, which is more of a on-demand type of reporting for maybe operator reports and things like that. So we thought it'd be a good combo to do these two together. And I think the kind of flow we're going to have today is Brett's going to kick it off with some data direct reports, going to kind of talk about that, build a couple reports and schedule them, and talk about some tips and tricks that people usually get hung up on and bestow his knowledge on us, as well as then I'm going to just talk briefly about snapshot reports and how to set them up and how easy it is to create these reports. So with that, I think we are ready to go with Brett.
All right, thank you, Roy, for the introduction. So what I'm going to talk about right here is about Data Direct. Like Roy said, it's an application that comes in default with 800XA. It's a tool that uses Excel as its mechanism for building reports. There's no license to use it as long as you're going to use basic history from the 800XA system. But it does have the capabilities of pulling data from an IM, which is the licensed portion of it. To use it is pretty simple. As you'll see, we're going to build two different reports here. We're going to build one that's like uses process values from a system. You could think of that something as like maybe an inventory of a tank farm area, or just a quick snapshot of the different looks of certain values for different areas. And then the other one we're going to do is we're going to do an event report, where with this report what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that we will take all the audit events from the system and we're going to record it to a Excel file, and we'll have it automatically run every 12 hours. Some possible use cases for this are like we're going to run through is an audit log, an operator report. This one would be like you could have it so that the operator is able to generate these reports, say, before he goes and takes an inventory of chemicals. He could press a button on the screen and it would make this report generate out and print out on a printer right near him. He could pick it up and take it along with him. Another way is that you could use this for reports for quantities of material, this and that come out say at midnight every night. The pros of using Data Direct are that you can honestly create a report in minutes. It doesn't take any special skills or expertise of the system to learn how to make a report. The other pro is that since it uses Excel, you can use a lot of the Excel functions that are in Excel, like changing colors of cells based on certain numbers, formatting of it, adding charts and graphs based on the numbers and information you pull from the system. The con is that this tool does not make conditional reports based on OPC data. And with that being a con, that's what Roy's going to talk about later, is how snapshot reports can fill that void right there. So the overall is that you're just going to learn about Data Direct and how quick and easy it is to use on your system to generate one-time reports or even to make scheduled reports. So in Excel, this is what the Data Direct toolbar looks like, mattering on what version of 800XA you have. In the upper left-hand corner, that would be the toolbar you'd see in 6.0, and in the lower left-hand corner is what you would see for earlier versions of 800XA. I highlighted the three buttons that we will be working with. The first one being process values, which is pretty much the value of right this moment in the system. Then you also have the history values, which allows us to pull a quantity of historical values for a certain point Just like your trends, we can pull like 10 points or 1,000 points. We can use that to build trends inside of Excel for reports. And the last one is alarm and events. This one looks at event list or alarm lists in your system and allows you to pull that information out and place it into Excel. And as you see over on the right-hand side, those are example windows of pressing each one of those buttons right there in the screens that you're going to be greeted with. During our demo, I'll go into a little more detail of the different menus and the different options in those screens. So here for the first demo, I'm going to show you the first two demos we plan on doing together. The first one is to create an event report where we're going to take the audit actions of the system and we're going to record them. And then the next one we're going to do is going to be a process one. So we're going to go into now a system and show you how this will be created. So here, what we're going to use off of our system is right here on the 800XA demo object, I have this audit trail list that I'm going to be using for making our list of audit events. And what I'm going to do for our process report is I'm going to use from here in the control structure these analog signals here and pretend these are, say, like tank values. First step is to launch Excel. And I have to stay in the virtual machine. Right. So once we launch Excel, we'll just create a new blank workbook. And since I've already used Data Direct before, I have right here, oh, sorry, that clicked into the wrong window. Let me see if I can make that go away. All right. There we go. Let's just make it so Excel doesn't take up the whole screen. So you see, since I've used Data Direct, I have the plugin right here. If you have an 800XA system and you don't see Data Direct immediately, it means the plugin hasn't been added for that user. And in the end of this, I have a little picture of where you can add that plugin for your computer. So first one we're going to do is we'll do the process values first. So you see the button right here for process values. When you click on it, you get a pop-up that allows you to navigate your system. As you see, this will look very similar to what I showed you earlier in the engineering workplace. And what we're going to do is come here off this demo OGP. I'm going to go look for those analog points that I told you that we're going to use. So if you look here, first off, you'll see that this shows all the different atoms that are available to pull the data from. Well, since I already know this system and I know what I'm after, I don't want to sort through this whole entire list to try to figure out what I want. Instead, I can just edit a filter and I say, you know what? The atom that I'm looking for is in.val. And I can use a special, let me type correctly. And then I can put a special character too that's still usable. And then now I only have the atom that I'm looking for. So in this case, I want this one. I can select it and hit apply. That'll drop it onto the Excel sheet here in the back, wherever I was selected originally. And I can continue to select different ones. Since I already created my filter, it's much easier now. Every time I pick another object, that filter stays. And as long as I keep pressing apply, I can keep adding more and more points to my report. As I go along. So now, one thing to notice why I'm doing this is I have my output set to formula. For this last one I'm going to do right here, I'll change it from formula to data only. And then I'll just hit here and I'll hit OK to close the window. So now I have a few different points on here, and as we can see, we can see the timestamp and the current values. Now, if I click on the ones that I use as a formula, you'll notice that up here we have a normal Excel formula that will be used to pull that data. Where the last one, since I didn't use a formula and I used just value, you see it wrote the physical value in here. This will be critical later on when we build an automated report because we need it to be an Excel formula so that it can be auto-calculated over and over again, and it's not that one-time value. So to make a report out of this, I could either just do as simple as this and save this and have it as a report, or I could create another sheet, call it whatever I want to do it, and then I could say, in there, I don't want it. I could just have it reference the different cells here. And then you could see how I could do tank 2, tank 3, all the way down. And then to make it look like a nice report, all we'd want to do is use print preview. And make sure it looks right on the sheet of paper. We can set print areas and everything else. Once we have that the way we want it to look, we just save it and then we can load it up in the scheduler. So now I'm going to switch gears for a moment and we're going to build our other report that we talked about for our audit trail. So this is done very similar to what I just did, except this time instead of going to process values, I'm going to pick alarm and event. Now with alarm and events and with historical values, we have a couple more options that we didn't have on the one before. We still have our output if it's a formula or data only. Since I'm going to make this an automated report, I want to make sure I have formula selected. Now as we look here, we can see as we click on different objects, if there's an alarm list or an event list on that object, it'll pop up here on the right-hand side. When you're making an event type report, it's important that you pick event lists, not alarm lists. The reason why is when this report would run, it's going to pull whatever's on that list at that time. And if you think about an alarm list, that's only things that are active at that moment and haven't been acknowledged or have been acknowledged but are still an alarm, where we want things that have come on and off the list for our report. So in that case, is what I'm going to be using is this audit trail list. Now the next part here is our time spans. We have a lot of different choices when it comes to time spans. You have date and time, cell reference, or dynamic time. For most normal reports, we're just able to use dynamic time, and we can use just now minus 12 hours to now. And then the last important option here is the maximum number of rows. What we want to make sure we pick is a number that is greater than what we'd expect to be needed for the report. So as you learn your process and you say, you know what, I have about 1,000 audit events happen a day or during a 12-hour period or however long you're going to run the report, you may want to go 1.5 to 2 times more than that. So that way if some process upset or something else happens in your process that would increase that number of events, you make sure you capture it. So in this scenario for here, I'm just going to leave it as 100 so we can see what happens when you do not have enough rows. So as you can see here, it generated all of them with the alarm list. And if I zoom out of the sheet a little, you can see all the different columns that make up that alarm list or that event list. But the critical message is this message right here that lets me know if I ever generate a report that my report didn't have enough lines is here. More messages exist in the time period than can be shown. It would mean to me that I missed a bunch of data or I missed a little bit of data. I won't really know. So that's why it's important that we create it, because if we look down throughout this cells, mostly if we look at row 101, you'll see it has that Excel report, Excel formula, but row 102 doesn't. Now, one question I get quite often is, well, why don't I just make it 60,000 rows so I can pretty much guarantee I have it? And the reason why you really wouldn't want to do that is because it's going to reduce performance. As you notice, 100 came in like that. 1,000 is going to take a little longer. 10,000 will take much longer. So you more or less want to try to, if you go double, that normally works out very well. So now this is my report. I'm going to make it one more time. This time I'm going to pick enough rows to cover at least a 2-hour time frame, just so that way the report will run really quickly. So we'll go to the same audit trail. We'll increase this to, say, 500. And instead of this being 12 hours for this demo, and I'll just change it to 2 hours. Then I'll hit OK. And as you can see, it takes a little bit longer than when we did 100 rows. But the good news is that row 501, 502, I saw the formula, but I don't have data, meaning that I have more than enough rows. So as I scroll up, we'll start seeing data where, yeah, there was none in that thing. So it means we haven't interacted with the system in 2 hours. So let me just delete this one. Let's make our span a little bit bigger.
I was at lunch, so I didn't make any changes. Sorry.
It's all right, Roy. We won't blame you. All right, so now I still have enough room, and I have events on here. As you can see, my last report, I went 100, and that wasn't enough. And if I really was in the 170s, it looks like 180s, I would add enough. So now the next step is I'm just going to delete this previous sheet that we don't need. Delete. Now, normally what I would do is sit and make this look nice and pretty when it would be printed out. So that way I could have this come out of a printer. I'm not going to worry about it in this demo here. All I'm going to do is save this file so that way we can make it into an automated report. So we're going to save it to the desktop, and we'll call it audit list. Call it 12-hour audit list. And then we have this for later on when we go to automate it. So now let's talk about the scheduling service before I schedule that report that we just created. The scheduler, it's a System 800XA tool that's part of the base system. It can do a couple different things for us. We'll see a couple things that it can do, but the most common use for it is to schedule 800XA backups and also to run scheduled reports. Difficulty use is pretty low. We just have really a few little aspects we have to change and add to automate things. The pro is that it's really nice because it can make a report and generate it in a different couple formats. So that Excel document we can have it so that the report generates in Excel, a PDF, or an HTML, or all of them at the same time. And a reason why that comes up is that there's a lot of sites that like to have an Excel document of those events, but also the PDF, because the PDF's not editable. But the Excel one's one they can really quickly go to and do some searches for and sorting and this and that. So we would generate an Excel version and a PDF version of that same report each time we generate a report. Pro is it's flexible of how and when it generates reports. We can have it so it generates a report every minute. We can have it generate every month. We can also have it generate when a certain value goes high in the system. So like say a motor, if the feedback goes away, you can have it generate like a trip report from that. The con is that you don't get a warning if your scheduled job doesn't complete. Normally that's not a problem except in the very beginning when you're building reports, making sure that you get all the parameters right so the report will generate. And we'll go over that here in a moment. So the major takeaway here is that the scheduler service is a simple way to automate your reports in your system. So the steps to configuring this is 4. The first step is that we'll go to the scheduling structure. We're going to build and we're going to load our report that we just created. As you remember that 12-hour report that we just created, we're going to load that into a file viewer aspect. Next, we're going to go under the job descriptions object in the schedule structure, and we're going to create a job description in our job folder in in that structure. Then the next step we're going to do is create and configure the action aspect to make a report, and we're going to pick what report we're going to run, how often, and where it's going to store that report. We can store it in the 800XA system. We can store it as a Windows file. A lot of different flexibility there. And then the last thing we'll do is configure the scheduling definition aspect to say when and how it's going to run. So here we're going to go ahead and we're going to automate that report that we just created a few minutes earlier. So you see we're under here under the scheduling structure. You can see I've already expanded some of these stuff. These are the reports. Normally what I like to do is I like to create an object to hold my template reports. So I'll create a new object. Report template. Then I'm going to create a file viewer aspect. Normally I just hit list presentation, come over here and start typing the aspect type I was looking for. And I could change the name. Default name is perfectly fine for me. And I will right click on it and go to config view. And I will attach the Excel document that we created earlier. What's really nice about doing it this way is that this Excel document becomes part of our AFW backup, so our monthly backup. So whenever we upgrade our system, all of our reports come with our system. It's not that we have to remember, oh, I have all my reports sitting in this file in this computer. That's no longer a concern. So now we see that the report's been attached. Now we can close this. So now we have the report there. We want to come under job description, our job folder, and we want to make a new object that's called of the type of job description. And I am not used to this keyboard. We're going to create a new aspect of action aspect. And what this is it determines what kind of action the system's going to take for this here. And as you see here, we have a couple different options. The one we're looking for is a report action to generate a report. Now after that's done, we get a new window to add some more fields in for this report. So the first thing it says is, where's this report at? Where's the template at to run? When you press the three dots, it'll ask you, is it a Windows file or a file viewer aspect? In this situation, we pick file viewer, and then we're going to navigate to our report. So there we are. So now it knows that that's the template it's going to use to run. And then now it's asking, well, where do you want to save this file? Or what do you want to do with it? As you can see, we can have it print out. If you have it set up for email, you can have it so it automatically emails out your report. In our scenario here, we're just going to have it export it, and we'll have it export to a couple locations. So the first one we're going to do is add object path. Object path means that the finished report will become part of our 800XA system. And here we can pick what kind of format we want it to be. This is part of the system. I'm going to pick it as to be a PDF. And then it's going to put it in here. It's going to make a new folder for this location with the timestamp there. And we'll hit OK. And then I also want it to be in a file path. Maybe you have a shared folder that you can access across the system. So at your corporate desk, you can sit and pull up these reports. So we can say we'll add a file path. It could be a network path, but here we're just going to make it on the C drive of this computer. And then we can pick the format that it comes out. And this one I'll pick it to be in Excel. Now, something nice right here for this one is the maximum number of files per type per directory. So what this allows for is that we don't overfill a hard drive or a space with the number of reports. After we have hit 200 reports, the oldest one would fall off, making sure we always just have 200 reports in there in case somebody's not maintaining it and looking at, make sure it's not overfilling. So there we are, so we'll hit OK. So you'll see that we have 2 exports of this report, and we're just going to hit apply. So now it's set up to run this report. Now we just need to tell it how often or when to run this report. So we'll go to our scheduling definition, and we can pick here for our different types of schedules. You can pick it on a cyclic schedule, an expression schedule. Expression schedule would be like I said earlier, if a certain value goes high or low, run this report. And we could do it on a monthly basis, periodic basis, weekly schedule. Like I can pick periodic, and I want it to run every 12 hours, starting, just pick 12:01 tonight, and it'll run every 12 hours, and then I can just hit apply, and now this will run. Now instead of waiting till 12:01, because I don't really want to wait that long, I'll just hit the Run Now button. This is a great tool for testing your reports to make sure they run correctly. So we'll click Run Now, and we'll see under Running Jobs, we have this green bubble showing this job running. If this job was to fail, it would turn from green to red. As long as it succeeds, it disappears. So when you're building your reports in the beginning, you want to make sure you're looking under the running jobs to make sure that that report is finishing and not turning red. Normal reasons why the report doesn't finish is either you've put in an invalid directory for it to go into, or you haven't installed the Data Direct add-in under the service account on the node that's going to run it. So you see up here we have our 12-hour audit list folder, and you see our report here, and we've left the timestamp portion here so that way we know what day it was ran and at what time. So if I click on it and I click on the file viewer, the report will come up here in a PDF. And since I didn't really pay too much attention on the formatting of it, you'll notice it's not really that great of a format. 44 pages because of the way the layout is. But let's go look at it as Excel document now. So you see my 12-hour audit list. Now notice it doesn't have the timestamp at the back of it, and it's because I didn't add those special things for it, and I'll show you that here in 1 second. But if I open it, it'll open up just the way we looked at it before. But we'll see that we have events all the way up to now, all the way through. And if we had a lot of more events to happen, which I'll go acknowledge a bunch of alarms here in 1 second, it'll have more data on it.
Right, you can also save for instance HTML file?
Correct, yeah, you can save it as HTML, as a text document, a PDF, Excel, there's quite a few different options that we have there. So we'll come under here, we'll go to our action aspect. This one right here, we're just gonna go and add in a greater than time. And then by adding that timestamp, whenever this report generates, it will create the timestamp in our file. So we'll just do one last time of running this report, and then I'm going to hand you guys over to Roy. So I'm just acknowledging some alarms to make sure some actions have happened since our last report. Our scheduling, let's go find our report again. We'll go under scheduling definition, and let's run our report one more time. So you see the green button, the report's running. It's finished. We now have another one up here with a newer timestamp. Now we have 2 in here. Now this one has the timestamp, so it makes sense. We open it up, we should be well more than 70 events that we were at before, and see we're at 193 events. And you can see it's a bunch of acknowledging of alarms here. And that's a quick, easy way. And like I said, if you want to make this look better for the PDF, just spend some time on the print preview, clean it up, make it look nice there, and you'll have a nice looking report that when it comes out.
All right, I think Bart wants to do a poll, I think, for this. While I get set up. and I will. It's running here. Okay, while you're doing that poll question, I'll get set up. While you're doing that poll question, I guess there was a few tips, though, Brett, that we wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I forgot to do that part. What
we were talking about, I think you mentioned the Data Direct is installed on a 800K service account. That trips people up once in a while, so that when you schedule it might work fine when you're probably in Excel, but when you go to schedule it, it doesn't come up or it doesn't work correctly.
Right. You'll get that red circle that I showed before, and luckily it'll give you a nice clean message that just will say, Data Direct's not installed on the service account, but it does trip up a lot of people.
And you said pick the right output, formula versus data, because you want to have the formula because you're going to copy. That's what's going to make the report run every time and get the updated information. Print preview is your friend, like as you showed us. Maybe you should have used that. Get more event lines than you need. You mentioned that one. The multiple formats, I think, is really helpful. I know that a lot of times a lot of customers were going to a share. They put it as an HTML, so everybody could bring it up pretty easily, and it works really well. A very light file as well, also for emails. Same with destination. So you can, when you set you can email it to somebody, you can print it out and save it to a directory. You can do all those things simultaneously.
Correct.
And get creative, again, so everything you can do with Excel, you can do in Data Direct. So you can pretty much have your secondary sheets, make it all look fancy. A lot of people will bring in all the raw data to one of the sheets and then do some really creative stuff in the charts and graphs and formatting and things.
And then just hide the sheets you don't need to see.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We have some results from the poll. We had a few that didn't answer. We had a few that kind of a split almost, huh?
Well, you didn't even answer.
Well,
right?
I guess I use it all the time. Yeah, I can't see why you wouldn't use this. I mean, it's in the system. It's great for reporting. The scheduler it has a lot of features and functionality. You can actually, I know we put low in for your ease of use and things to do basic reporting. I would agree, but you can do nested reports. So you can have one report run, and then that will feed off the other one won't run until the first one completes. And you can do some nested things in there and actually do some pretty high-end reporting with the scheduling feature in this. So on to Snapshot reports. So for this is an option for 800XA. So we're Data Direct to use it within the system. That's part of the base. This is an option on top of the base. And what this does is it's kind of an easy to use search or query engine for 800XA for the aspect object or for all your tags. So where if you did a Data Direct and you had certain data, especially for process data that you're looking at, which you could use, what if you add a tag, right? So you're going to have to go in now and actually get a formula and put it into that report and edit that report to get that new data. Now there are some, again, with Data Direct, I have seen people do some pretty crazy things, very creative things where maybe they, in one sheet, get some data and then feed that into the other side of the data or another report and things. So there's a ton of ways to do anything. But for the basics, you'd have to go in and edit that report when you added some tags to the system. So what this does is kind of does a query base so that if you add a tag and put it over a certain area in your report, it'll get anything that you add underneath that structure or area that you're actually searching. So it's pretty useful. This has been out for quite a while. It's in definitely in all of version 5 and 6 systems are available for them. Difficulty to use, I would say, if I put it easier than what Brett showed, I would say yes. As you'll see, we'll go through this in a second. I've also put the user's guide in there, so you can find that. Possible use cases, mostly this was used for like a shift changeover report. So this was always a popular thing that any system had to do through my career was, hey, I want to get my operators a list of all the PIDs in manual. I want to see any force signals. I want to see how many tags have some kind of asset alert or some kind of condition. So I want to do something and create a list that when I do a shift changeover, they know the present status rather than popping through a bunch of graphics and screens and things. However, we find a lot of times like engineers will use this in their management of change procedures. So they'll go and say, okay, who's touched anything in the last 8 hours or the last month? You know, so you can get a list of anybody that's done any kind of edits or any kind of tags that have a newer save date, for instance. So there's a lot of different uses. It's kind of endless. So pros and cons, it's very easy to set up and extremely useful. It cannot be scheduled. So this isn't something you can use the scheduler and then kick this off. So some customers are like, hey, this is a great way to do reports. I wanted to be able to schedule it. I know I put this requirement in, but I don't have anything solid to tell you that it could be scheduled in the future. The results can be exported to Excel, though, so you can take whatever results you have and save them off. And then, of course, it's an option. Why is it an option, Roy? This is great. This should be in your base system. You're right, but this is actually a third party actually configured this for a customer and then offered it to ABB and said, hey, if you want us to maintain it over time and things like that, we need to get something for the effort. So that's why it's an option. So let me show you this a little bit, or let me. Okay. So we talked about what it was, basically. I can skip this. And what I wanted to show you is the basic steps we're going to do. I probably won't show this unless we really need to at the end, but in version 6, you have a lot of the node setups is in the system configuration console, the system function. It's a system function now in the system. So you can see here a little picture of the snapshot reports and if it's deployed in there. So that would be the first step. The second step would be to set up your queries, and we're going to go take a look at those and what's involved. There's multiple ways you can do it, but there's some basic ways I'll show you that's very easy to configure. These are the queries. So I'm going to look at all my object types, all my PID object types, and I'm going to see if the manual mode is set to true. So that's the basic kind of thing we're going to configure or look at. Then I'm going to go to some place like my functional structure and say, okay, of all the queries that I've done, like PIDs and manual, things that are forced, things in alarm, whatever it is, or things with operator notes that aren't empty, you name it, I'm going to add those to maybe this report that I want to view, and I'm going to then put it and then tell it where to go search if I want, like a certain structure and below, like for under a unit. And that's going to give me back a pre-formatted report with all that data. And I'm going to have something that kind of looks like this. Based on those queries, these are the different tags that meet that criteria. And this is a live report. So if I click on those tags, I can get up the faceplate, or if I right mouse click, I'm going to get the asset. One thing, I think there's a poll. Before I ran into things, I wanted to try to do a poll to see if you guys ever heard of this feature. So I think that's the first poll question, and I'll get the demo fired up here while you're answering that.
Now, Roy, you can put links to this on like a graphic too, for like pulling up for like an operator to run the report, right?
Yeah. So this is an asset. So
yeah.
We'll see that this is that's how I'm going to call it up.
Okay.
It's, actually off of a graphic. It can be put anywhere, or off of a right mouse click or what have you. How are you doing on the poll? Pretty good? So the first thing I'm going to do while you're doing that is go to the library structure. This is where the queries are set up. So I'm going to assume that you've, I guess, Brett, have you installed this at all?
Yes.
Okay. Is it anything difficult for?
No, even for 5.0 or 5.1 or 6.0, it's pretty quick. I did it in just a few hours for a multi-node system.
Any difference between version 5 and 6?
Well, in 6, the auto deployment does it. I just sit at one node, I just press deploy and it installs it all on.
In version 5, did you have to do it on each node?
Yeah, you had to go to each node and then deploy the extension and then go from there.
All right. So to set this up, remember first I want to create the queries that I might want to use. So if you go into the library structure, you'll notice there's something called Snapshot Report Template. When you add this, there's a bunch of samples that are available, like find log configurations, alarms that are active. It gives you a good kind of examples of how to do this. There's one here that I'm going to use called Shift Handover Report. So that's the one I'm going to show you how we configure that. And in here, we created a number of these snapshot templates, these queries. that I'm going to look at. Maybe I'll just look at a couple of these. So each one has some configuration in there. This one looks at this, a certain object type, a control module by the name of signal real calc in, and it's looking for a certain parameter. I'll get rid of this poll here. And if you look down, it'll looking for this one interaction part that's going to be true. So we'll open this up a little more to look at some, but it's looking at a certain parameter and if it's true or not. So somebody's went in here and created a bunch of these for different types of objects, because you can use those in different places. So maybe in one report you want to look at certain types of objects, in another one you don't. So you have the option later when we look at the report view to pick which templates you want to be part of that report. So here I'm going to look at the PID loops and manual. For instance, here I'll bring up the config view so it's a little larger. So here is the basic configuration of there. So when this actually looks in the interaction par and the faceplate in a certain mode. What is the auto? Is it true or false? In this case, whatever object you're looking at, some libraries say that it's true. It might be a manual mode, a separate parameter called manual mode. You want to look for that to be true. Some have one that's auto and it's either true or false. So you just have to know your library a little bit to know what you're going to do there. And when you're configuring it, a little tip is when you look at something, when you click this, that's when you get your different your operations there that you want to use. So you're going to create these different, this particular one looks at the PID Advanced TC. Now let's say you use the other PID, like what's our PID Simple or something. You probably want to create another one of these, right? And then maybe put both of those in, because maybe somebody's used both object types. So again, this is going to go out and look for these particular object types. In here, you have the option to put in search from where. So here, in this case, they've already configured that, hey, I want to run it from a certain location. And it gave the path. So in that case, later you'll see where that comes into play. So these have been set up. There's motors in manual mode, different types of motors in manual mode, and so forth. So now let's go to the functional structure, where I'm going to show you where the report was done. So here I can just type F. Here's my functional structure. And I know that we've put this process in under process area. We have the configuration there. Shift handler report. Now we're going to look at the config view first. So this gives me all the templates that are available, and then allows me to place them down here so you can see which ones we're just kind of placing there. So if I wanted to, let's just take one and put it down, and then I'll take it back. So here's we put all the ones for the shift changeover, but let's say I didn't want one of these. Let's put it back. So let's take the active alarms one, and we're going to basically say, no, I don't want that one. So now I put it back up in the available list, and I just have these selected. So I'm going to hit apply. So search where. This is defined by template. Now this is where somebody's already defined that in the template itself, or we could select here and say, I want to do it from this structure and below, and have some other options there to know your search area. And I think that's important. There is I see some performance. If you have a large system and you put it up at the top level and you're going to search your 10,000 objects, it's going to take a little bit. So I think the same thing about the reports. You want to be a little cautious about where you put this and how many objects you're going to search for, and try to optimize it so that it runs fairly quickly, because especially if you're using it for an operator report, because operators don't want to wait for anything, they want to have it right there. So by doing that, you can execute search when an aspect is viewed, or if you unclick this, when it comes up, then you'll have to hit search. So it's more of a manual operation. Report view options. Now this tells me like show all the templates at the same time in the same report and things. So there's a couple options here for how you want that to look. Or you could have them call up one at a time and then pick from a list. Now I just want to see the active alarms. No, I just want to see the operator notes. So you have a lot of control over how it's used. Typically I see it being used more like this, but maybe if you have a lot of objects, maybe it's a little obnoxious to have that long of a list. So this is all configured. So now I'm going to show you what this looks like, and I'll show you how to call it up off of an asset. So this is the way it's configured in our system here. Oops. Grab the right window here. So in this screen here, this is our an operator environment. And when you go up to, we have a little navigation pop up here. And in here, somebody's put, this is just an aspect link for it. When you call that up, it's going to go out now and search for all those queries that we put in there. So now we see for operator notes, these are all the objects with operator notes. These are all the PID loops in manual. And so for instance, I could right mouse click this and actually open the faceplate up. We see that up, it is in manual. I could maybe put it in auto. And I'm going to close that. And now I'm going to, I could probably just research, but let's just call it up again. And now we don't have any PID loops in manual. So it's going to go through wherever we told it to and actually search for all the objects that we define in those queries, and then basically come back and spit it back at us. So it's a great way to see all the force signals, all the valves in manual, one nice report right here, and you can divvy it up however you want. Very much like alarm lists or anything else. You're going to put it at a certain level and then look below. If you want to, then you can put it to a cell. You can take the same, all this information, and it'll pop it in there. Open. And let's see, that's about it. So that's pretty much, I mean, so it's very easy to set up for the basic configuration. And I think we had one more poll question. I just wanted to see if anybody on the line is actually using Snapshot reports. So it looks like a few people knew about it and they haven't purchased it, or they aren't using it. But this, to me, I mean, when I worked at a site, this is the kind of data we needed every day, and it was always a challenge for how to do it. And 800XA has multiple ways to do it, I would say, but this, by far, I think is probably one of the easiest ways to set it up. And if I add a tag in a certain area, it's always going to be there. So with that, I think we're pretty much done. I think we wanted to open it up for questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please type them into the Q&A panel.
And if you notice the Q&A, if you have any questions, please contact me. That means Brett at his number.
Contact Roy first.
When I say me, I mean you. The first question I see, is this a 6.1 feature only? I'm guessing you're about Snapshot reports. No, this is available, boy, I'm trying to think of.
5.0 Service Pack 2, I want to say it's Rev B.
Something like that.
It's been
around for quite a while,
yeah.
So I would say, I'm going to guess you're probably at 5.1 version or something like that. So you're some feature pack version of 5.0. So I think you'll be fine.
So I see Mike's asking about Data Direct tab. If there is none, like I said, I did put at the end the location of the plugin is right here. Mattering on what version of 800XA you have, but if you have 5.1 Rev C or later, it's going to be under C, Program Data, ABB, 800XA, Data Direct Bin. If you are using a version before then, it's going to be Program Files or Program Files x86, ABB, IM, Data Direct Bin. So it's going to either be Program Files or Program Data, mattering on the version you have. So if you do not have Data Direct installed, you can just easily install it on that node. There's no things that need to be deployed. There's no certain things that have to be installed on all the nodes. Data Direct can be installed on one node or all the nodes. It just matters on how your site would want to use it.
Somebody asked about we have system 5.1, we don't have it. I'm guessing, is that what you just answered that about data direct? But if it's Snapshot reports, it is an option. You have to buy it and actually deploy it in the system, or add the system extension and so forth. So it is kind of a separate install above and beyond the base.
Now, batch reports, I didn't get into it because it's a little more, there's more to it, the more functionality you can do, but that's data direct is also used for batch reports also.
Can you do a comparison of current to archive state values with Snapshot? Well, I guess you could. I don't think so. I would say you could create something by getting the current data. If you did have this already in Excel, you could probably then take that data and copy it in to do some rudimentary. I'm guessing it's more of a management of change type of thing. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess.
But one thing go ahead.
No, that's a good one. I guess I'd have to understand this use case. Because data direct could do some of this too if you save the data and you could use Excel to do comparisons.
Yeah, I've done that as well. One thing. Oops. Somebody wants to answer, Diane.
She has a question.
Yeah. One thing is our Consult IT group here has an offering they sell with their it's called Management of Change, or I think Configuration Audit System or something to that effect. It's an MOC tool in 800XA built in so that you can basically set up all the parameters that you want to monitor. Let's say it's gains and stuff like that out of a PID. It could be alarm parameter values. All of those things can be monitored and also saved off to a known good file, like a golden file, and those can do all those discrepancy reports. So that's probably the way. If your use case is more kind of doing a, hey, has anything changed since my perfect day that I ran 3 months ago, and you want to do a discrepancy report and say, hey, okay, somebody changed alarm values or tuning and things like that. I would probably do this, look into this Consult AT Management of Change tool. And if you talk to your account manager or something, or give me a call, I can get you in touch with the right people, talk about that. But what's nice is it's all embedded in 800XA. A lot of people buy third-party tools to siphon all the data via OPC out, and that really has to crunch a lot of data, I think, when we have something they can kind of put it right in there.
Now, Fred asked about a tutorial for batch. Unfortunately, I don't have batch on this to do a tutorial for that, but we can work something out to get it something for batch reports.
Change reports need to have batch data. Yeah, I think, well, a lot of the data from batch runs normally anyways, a lot of the production data, but we have what's called production data logs that go with the information manager. And that's typically how we do reports for that. There are some new things coming up, though, that you might be interested in, but I have to know your version of the system and know the things you're using. John, come over to my desk. We're in a collaborative environment for pricing, but it's in the price book, in your wizard file. But let's see. Yeah. Fred asked. We have system version 5.1 Rev D feature pack 4. So yeah, you have data direct. This should be in your system already. If you're talking about Snapshot reports, again, that's an option. The question is, did you purchase it or not? You can look at your license file or probably in My Control System or something like that if you have access to it.
Yeah, send us an email and we'll make sure we get you in contact with somebody to help.
I'll pull that back up. Okay, well, I hope everyone's learned something at least. Again, if you have any further questions, you can get a hold of us at our emails and phone numbers here. And we'll be back to you, I hope, with another scheduled webinar with a couple other things like this. Just simple things you can do with the system to make it more valuable. And if you have any, I guess, ideas or requests, please send them to us as well, and we'll get those over to Bart here to maybe schedule in the future.